You're listening to Shoe In, covering the ins and outs of all things footwear, from sneakers to heels, loafers to slippers, and every type of shoe in between. Brought to you by the FDRA, the Footwear Industries Association focused on retail, trade, politics, and fashion, helping create and enhance conversations on all things footwear. And now your footwear insiders, Matt Priest and Andy Polk.
All right, all our footwear fans, welcome back to the show. Thank you for listening as always. Thanks to our loyal listeners who I know give us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts and other podcasts for how great this show is for the footwear industry. Jasmine, I don't know if you feel it, but in the air, I feel a chill. It's officially fall now. It's time to go outside for the fire pit or like start a fire inside, which makes me really happy personally. I'm a cold type person, not a freezing person, just a cold person. I don't know about you.
What do you think? That's because you were born in this fall time span? I feel like everybody likes wherever they were born in. So like I really like the summertime, but I'm also born in August. So
maybe. I mean, I don't know if it's, like thinking back when I helped my dad like rake leaves or we play football on the leaves and just it's like I felt like over the summer months it was so hot you could only do so much growing up in the South, but then the fall came and it was like the only bad thing about the fall was school started back. That was the only bad thing about the whole thing. I mean, if you're talking about like drinking pumpkin spice lattes and eating spice cake, I mean, sign me up. I mean, that's really what it's all about, right? So, and hopefully folks out there, as we're going through this kind of pandemic still, we hope that your spirits are doing okay. And for those who are looking for work out there, we want to encourage you that I see some openings happening up every single day. So hopefully improvements will keep happening. But the podcast really is about the business side of the industry. And we keep talking about duties and we keep talking about supply chains a lot over the past several months. And the simple reason is at retail, the discounting that's taking place is killing all the margin. So if a shoe company, retailer brand, et cetera, really wants to make profits and really wants to make legitimate revenue, they've got to start back in their supply chain from the very start and think about their product and their duties and think about trade issues. And it's one of those things where, people, it may not be the sexiest thing because we want to think about the product and touching it and feeling it, et cetera. But I mean, if we want to be in business, this is the whole thing. So I'm really excited today to have an expert come on with us today from KPMG. That is Nicole Porpiglia. She is the senior manager in the trade and customs practice who focuses on a lot of these issues for many clients, not just in footwear, but in many other industries as well. Nicole, thanks so much for coming on today.
Thanks for having me. Very exciting to be here.
Nice. So are you a fall person or are you a summer person right off the bat?
Oh, I'm definitely a fall person.
Awesome.
I love the leaves changing.
Nice. So we're all in the safe space here. We're all fall fan. Jasmine, you are a fall fan, right? Is that correct? Or are you a summer fan? I just want to get that straight up.
Well, I love summer, but I'm definitely all fall. I love the color of the leaves changing. I love hot cocoa, apple cider, all that.
All the above. Excellent. So Nicole, to get on to these points around, supply chain, kind of costing and efficiencies and optimizations that all these companies really need right now. See, these things let's be honest, Nicole's been to many of our events and spoken at them. She helps on a lot of our working group calls, but these are things we've been talking about for so long. And everyone's like, yeah, well, that's important. And now all of a sudden people are like, really like, oh my gosh, I really got to get this. Are you seeing that from your clients? What are some conversations you're having around some of these things with the folks you work with?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, there's so many different things happening globally, so many different investigations being open, so many different tariffs popping up. Companies are trying to find the right country to land in, whether it's the US, whether it's, certain countries in Asia. So really, I think the biggest theme now is being nimble. I think companies really want to be nimble. So that I would say that's the biggest theme is how do we, like you said, we've been talking about duty drawback and first sale and all these different strategies, which are great for so many years, but it's how do you stay nimble in order to use them and save?
Yeah. And what like when you talk to folks about strategies around kind of being nimble and around these kind of the 301 stuff's been popping up. I mean, now we're looking at potentially Vietnam getting hit with 301 because of currency manipulation, which is, you know, in trade parlance, when we're all kind of nerding out about it, it's kind of crazy that that's happening. But I know that you in the past have talked about things like FTZs and first sale, and maybe you can just touch on a few of those really quickly that can remind people what those are and how they can use those.
Sure. Yeah. So essentially, what every different, now I can say every industry. Historically, we know poor footwear industry. You guys have been hammered with tariffs for many years, but now there's so many industries getting targeted and hit with these tariffs that these programs that weren't historically used by a company and say a different division or a different product type now are turning to programs like First Sale to help with valuation strategies so that they can optimize their landed cost into the United States. And so First Sale generally is applicable to companies in the United States. So it's a program that a lot of, this network and the footwear industry, is probably either currently taking advantage of, or if you're not taking advantage of, is a program you can use to be nimble. Yes, it takes, some investment to ensure that you're compliant with the program, which is first and foremost. If anyone from Customs here is listening, compliance is key. But simply, it allows companies as they shift production to be able to, think about the suppliers that they're shifting production to and say, hey, we've shifted now to, to Vietnam. Let's think about what First Sale can do so we can pay less duties upon import. Now, duty drawback for companies that are, importing and exporting. So in the US, let's say that maybe you can't take advantage of USMCA, right, between, Canada and Mexico. If you're still, doing business between Canada and Mexico, or let's say Latin America or the Caribbean, you can leverage, duty drawback, and that can allow you to be nimble because it's not a program that is significantly hard to maintain. It's just a program that takes access to data, documents, retention. So it allows company to retain, the duty that they dished out for goods that didn't even end up in America. So also speak on the topic of being nimble, right? FTZs. And we can say FTZs, we can say bonded warehouses, and say other countries when we speak globally. I know some of the global footwear companies, are in many countries. So in those instances, utilizing an FTZ will allow you to be nimble. And if you have to move product around between countries, between the US and other countries, not only does it have its own traditional benefits of consolidated weekly entries and the transactional benefits, it really helps companies, improve their cash flow and create a situation, especially during COVID, which was completely, foreign to all of us, where companies were able to leverage their zones to hold their inventory longer, move their inventory to another country and didn't take on some of those tariffs that were applied. So, these type of strategies allow companies to really be nimble. But I think that a big part of, the theme we're seeing today is how do we get our hands around our data so that we can make the right decisions, right? And I think that goes back to, discussions on, well, where are goods coming from exactly? Like not where they're being shipped from, but where are they actually coming from? So, I think there's a lot of question, and it's very challenging for companies to say, hey, are my goods really from Vietnam? Are my goods really from China?
Right.
are we going to be subject to the tariffs that are being deployed now? And the question is how good is your underlying data to allow you to know what your exposure is?
Right.
So,
Right.
I mean, that's all things that, companies are top of mind. And to be honest, they're top of mind at the C-suite. There's so many calls I get from, the CFO and the COO coming to me saying, "Hey, wait, how do I assess this? How do I get a handle on what's happening?" Or maybe your hand is on the pulse and you're exactly your impact and you've got big exposure, and now you're saying, well, let's talk about moving our supply chain to another country. But then tomorrow a tariff hits you in another country, or even another significant issue like the labor situation in those countries, or even the logistics costs in those countries. It now becomes a multi-point focus of where do we go next, and how do we keep reacting to the disruption.
Yeah, I think to kind of encapsulate that and how people need to think about it is like trade principles instead of just going, like really executing against what are our principles, right? Let's use these. Let's line up the things that we know can work and help us in these different scenarios. And when you run scenario planning and making those decisions, you use those principles to plug in and make sure that you're still able to find savings, even if you're moving somewhere else. But it just seems like there's a lot of whack-a-mole in sourcing and trade today where people are just kind of making a decision off one data point or two data points and realizing only when they get into it, the third, fourth, and fifth matter just as much. And so I think if we can think more about principles like that, I think that would be a huge benefit. And of course, the FTZs are always going to be there. And we see a huge uptick. Like I was talking to Port of Long Beach the other week, and they said there's a large number of footwear companies starting to finally utilize that program. It's not easy. You got to do a lot of paperwork and clear a lot of hurdles. But once you do, obviously it's there. So I think that's important. Maybe you can talk a little bit too, because I think in our environment that we have now, more and more footwear companies, need to expand their footprint, not just in the US, but in Europe and beyond. And I think sometimes we forget in those other markets, there's other issues that are taking place. So I know in France, there's some kind of taxes coming into play. And I'd like you to discuss that really quickly, just to give everybody a heads up. I think it's around luxury goods, and you can talk about that. But also just in general, there's a lot of churn at WTO, the World Trade Organization, that determines tariffs and the reactionary impact of U.S. tariffs on other goods. So maybe you can talk a little bit about what that is and how that's kind of interplaying in the global landscape where people are trying to sell in other markets and how these things may impact them.
So that was a great point. So yeah, absolutely. France right now announced that they will be applying the digital service tax in December and mainly this will impact a lot of U.S. companies. The retaliatory measures that the United States has proposed has been, this particular list of luxury goods, right? And we know that handbags and small leather goods and cosmetics fall on that, which is not exactly the footwear industry per se, but I think the theme here, as you think about the digital service tax that's currently being implemented in France, and the digital service tax that they're tossing around the idea of in other countries within the EU and Brazil and Indonesia, a few other countries, we think about what will be the outcome of those services tax on tariffs, right? We don't know if footwear will pop up on them, so I think it comes back to the same conversation with all of these investigations that are being opened up, including the one within the WTO, the retaliatory tariffs that they recently announced on $4 billion worth of goods in response to subsidies that the U.S. gave Boeing. Mm-hmm. That situation will impact anyone importing into Europe from the U.S. But I think the centralized theme here is it goes back to origin, right? That would have impact U.S. companies with U.S. origin product, and is that where footwear companies are producing their goods today? Thinking about the future, is that where they will be producing goods in the future? And, what are the impacts are they going to have into Europe if they, or any of these other countries, if there's some retaliation piece to it? So, I mean, there's a lot of question marks right now, but I think the theme goes back to, how do we get a handle on our origin? How do we be nimble enough to react? And how do we take advantage of strategies? And honestly, in my opinion, this probably all comes back to data. How good is my data? And how can we use our data to think about strategy and think quickly?
Yeah. And I think the unfortunate side effect of what's happening now with trade policy from the U.S. perspective is, we used to lead on trade policy, and we used to try to create structure and organization and enforcement and kind of fair boundaries across the world. And now it seems like we're the ones creating a little bit of the chaos that is, I liken it to throwing a stone in the lake, where the first is a big dip, and then you have these ripples that go out that you don't know where or how far they'll go. But, it's one of those things where you hope at some point things kind of normalize and stabilize, and we can fight around rules instead of fight around kind of politics around trade, right? Hopefully it stabilizes soon.
Well, I think it's funny, very interesting you bring that point up, because I think it's like also the perspectives we look at it, right? So I see from your guys' end, you are trying to be proactive about trade, and you want to put structure around trade. And of course, I want that as well. But I'm thinking, I'm seeing it from the perspective of, how do I react to trade, right? And I think it's, how do we manage the fallout from trade? So it's, it's positive to have the best structure in place and the most optimal structure, right? But we're seeing it from two different point of views at this point.
Right. Great point. One thing I do want to discuss with you too is, and we've heard it from other people as well, obviously with COVID, organizations and companies have been transforming. They've been reassigning roles. They've been eliminating roles. Unfortunately, they've been trying to figure out strategies and how to, best put the best people in best places. What are you guys seeing in terms of trade and customs and those kind of personnel and departments? Is there a lot of transition taking place? What are you seeing from your clients? What are they asking of you now?
Yeah, so we're seeing a lot of variation. There's not a one size fits all answer here, but I will say we're sort of being asked to transform trade, I would say. I think that's a nice coined phrase of what describes what we're doing now. We're really looking at assessing what companies are doing now, not necessarily to say something's right or something wrong, but it's more to be proactive about making adjustments. So some companies may come to us and say, this is our structure, this is what we're doing, how do we implement a program, right?
Right.
And then some companies come to us and say, all right, our budget was cut, we have less headcount or whatever it may be, and say, how do we operate optimally, or how do we operate in a better situation than we're operating today, right? And so what we're doing a lot with companies is, we're assessing the current state, and we're really digging into data, and we're trying to map out not just what programs can we use, but also like what is taking up your time internally. What tasks is your team spending time on that maybe they shouldn't be spending their time on? Maybe they shouldn't be spending their time classifying, and maybe they should be spending their time, auditing their first sale program, or thinking strategically about how to, tariff engineer their goods to get it to a more optimal state, right? And so we're really looking at the balance between what they want to manage themselves, what do they want to think, what do they want to do from a strategy standpoint, and obviously in our instance how we can help them do that. But I mean, that's what companies are really looking for now, is they're looking to just reassess and transform their program and their department into one that that can react to everything that's being thrown at them.
Right. And you can't do that without good partners, folks. I know there's some companies out there who, are super large and can build it maybe in house, but even then you probably lack some expertise and have some blind spots. And it really behooves you to work with folks like KPMG who can go in and look at what you're doing, how you're doing it. Ask the question why. I think that's probably the biggest thing we're all asking. If your company is asking why we're doing this, then you're in a good spot. I think if they were asking why you're doing this before COVID, you'd be in a bad spot because you'd be saying, "Oh my gosh, the consultants are coming in to do something that I don't like." But at this point, we've all got to ask why we've been doing it, why we continue to do it, should we keep doing it? So I think Nicole's points are well taken around all that stuff, and what they're trying to help do is optimize and allow the companies to prioritize things and really figure that out. So I don't see that as a negative, Nicole. I see it as a huge positive that folks are asking these questions and trying to reorganize to become more nimble in that sense. So,
I think, Andy, just to add to that, I think one thing is people, companies' businesses are also changing with technology, right? They're either being asked to deliver to the house of somebody, or they're asking for, some sort of innovative way to interact, right? So it's how do you make sure that as you're evolving your business, you're also evolving your trade program?
Right. That's it. I think you're right, because it's all integrated. It's all got to be working together in these new systems we all have. I want to bring in Jasmine now because I think we should transition this to and I'm gonna let Jasmine choose what theme she wants. What are we doing today, Jasmine?
Well, one thing that I really love about our service providers is that they do more of the technical aspect of software. And I'm always just curious because when we do these in-person events, we get to see their style and what people have on their feet. But of course, virtually we don't. So Nicole, there's been some very popular shoes that have come out of this time that we're in. Crocs has been a big hit. Definitely a lot of the sneaker brands are still doing very well. So what's been your style over these past 7 months? What have you been picking up to go out and what have you been buying recently? Like, what's your footwear style right now?
This is the real question. This is the hardest hitting question of the episode.
Oh my gosh, it's such a great question. I love it. I would say I have two right now. I have my running sneakers, which, by the way, I'm in the market for a new pair. So anyone on the line that wants to send me some. No, I'm just kidding. Got my trainers. They're my go-to because I love to run. So I got my Nikes. Am I allowed to say that, by the way?
Absolutely.
Okay. Got my Nikes. And my second pair is I've got these great pair of DKNY sneaker heels.
Oh,
They're black. They got the white trim around the grip at the bottom. And they go about to my ankle. So I love them. And they go great with that, comfy jean t-shirt look that I love so much.
Yeah, that's awesome. Where'd you pick those up? Did you go to retail? Were those offline?
I got them from Macy's. So that was a great find when we were allowed to shop in stores.
Yeah. Awesome. I love a good wedge sneaker. They are definitely great, very sporty, but it looks like you put a little effort into your outfit with these. So those are great.
Got to throw the leather jacket in there too, Got the sneaker heels, and I got my leather jacket. So
leather jackets are like essential for the fall. So you're all set.
Absolutely.
I think this conversation's too advanced for me. Let's get to the trade talk and let you guys do that. I do think, Jasmine, as you look at the marketplace right now, obviously everybody is trying to go more casual because of, the continued kind of issue with going out and traveling and all that. How do you think that's impacting like fall fashion? Obviously, what may change is less high heels or something like that, but like maybe more comfy boots or something. I don't know what you think about that.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't seen as many style options as I'm used to, or as many popular trends as we like. Usually there's always something. There's either like a print that's super popular or a material that's super popular, and I'm not seeing so much of that, but a lot of people's classic style or what people remember the brand to be, I think those are the things that are winning right now. I mean, of course, we'll have some of those celebrity collaborations, and I'm pretty sure those things were already in contract and they just had to push forward. But I think like just having, so many different style options, I feel like I'm seeing a lot less of that and just a lot more classic and, like you said, comfy. People are just, wanting to get outside and do some walking. So yeah, definitely less heels from my point of view.
That's interesting. I think you're right. I obviously don't track it as much as you do, but I think you're right. I think brands are playing it safe and trying to go with the cash cows they've always had and maximize that versus throw something in the market that may not work. Me personally, I'm waiting for someone to take a huge risk and work with Dunkin' Donuts to come up with a pumpkin spice pump, a high heel that's pumpkin spice themed, and every time you walk into Dunkin's with it, you get a free refill. So that's what I'm looking for.
Look, if you can have a partnership with Crocs, that's a possibility.
Oh, there you go. That could be something cool. Oh, yeah. Great. Nicole, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate your insights on what you guys are doing at KPMG.
No, thank you so much for having me. This was so exciting, and this was my first podcast, so I feel really honored that it was with you guys.
You did so good. That was amazing. Coming on. Folks, we want to thank you guys also for listening and for joining us for the Shoe and Show, the Footwear and Shoes podcast. As always, you can go to shoeandshow.com and see our entire catalog of 250 shows at this point. Drop us a line while you're there. In the left-hand corner, there's a little button that looks like a microphone. It's a voice note, so you can actually click on that and leave us a message where you tell us, how you like the show. If you think we should have a specific guest on or a topic, we'd love to hear from you and get your feedback. And as always, we really appreciate you listening. Share this with a colleague, share it with a friend. Keep spreading the good word around the industry about Shoe and Show. We're here to help. We're here to strengthen the industry. And on behalf of our whole team here, we hope you stay safe. We hope you stay healthy. We hope you keep buying shoes. And until next time, Shoe-In is out.
Shoe-In has been brought to you by the FDRA, the Footwear Industries Association focused on retail, trade, politics, and fashion, helping create and enhance conversations on all things footwear. For information about FDRA, visit fdra.org.